Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In our story, what begins as an ordinary vacation in the history-filled streets of Istanbul will turn into an unforgettable nightmare for Dominic. The ancient musical instrument he discovers in the depths of Sultanahmet unleashes a curse that upends his and his friends' lives. This story, woven with bloody tears, mysterious deaths, and terrifying secrets, will drag you into a storm of suspense that will leave you breathless. As Dominic tries to solve the deadly connection between the antique dealer Ariel and the cursed musical instrument, will he be able to escape this curse?
Dominic escapes the cold and gray weather of England for a vacation in the warm and vibrant city of Istanbul. The hustle and energy of the city make him feel refreshed. On his first day, while wandering around Sultanahmet Square, he immerses himself in the historical atmosphere. The grandeur of Hagia Sophia and the elegance of the Blue Mosque in the middle of the square captivate him. He then visits the Spice Bazaar and enjoys the colorful spices, exotic scents, and the products of local artisans. During a boat tour on the Bosphorus, he finds peace as he watches the mesmerizing scenery that bridges two continents. One day, he decides to visit Hagia Sophia. The atmosphere and architectural details inside this historic structure deeply affect him. The mosaics, frescoes, and historical textures under the dome seem like silent witnesses to the events that have taken place here over the centuries. After finishing his tour inside Hagia Sophia, he steps into the garden and decides to rest for a while. While strolling through the garden, he carefully examines each stone on the ground. As he walks among the historic stones, he notices one stone is different from the others. This stone is slightly displaced with its edge lifted. His curiosity grows, and he decides to lift the stone. When he lifts it, he discovers an old box covered in dirt underneath. The box is adorned with intricate patterns and symbols. Dominic carefully opens the box and finds an object inside. This object is a complex mix of wood and metal. The symbols and writings on it are unlike anything Dominic has ever seen before. This old and mysterious object seems to hold a secret. He takes the object in his hand and examines it carefully, but he cannot figure out what it is or what it does. As Dominic contemplates what to do with this object, he begins to feel uneasy. This antique and enigmatic item is like a puzzle drawing him in. He carefully closes the box and places it in his backpack, unsure of the mystery he has uncovered. Dominic quickly returns to his hotel, still filled with many questions and eager to understand what this object is. Upon reaching his room, he carefully takes out the object and places it on the table. The room is dimly lit as Dominic uses a cloth and some water to clean the dust and grime off the object. As he cleans, the symbols and patterns on the surface become more distinct. The details of the wooden and metal parts reveal how old and valuable this object is. During the cleaning process, he notices that some parts are loose and coming apart. Afraid of causing more damage, he stops cleaning and carefully puts the pieces back in place. The mystery of this object only increases Dominic's curiosity. However, he knows he needs a plan to get the object through the airport without any issues. He carefully places the object back in its box and covers it with a soft cloth to prevent damage. Then, he wraps and packs it as if it were a regular souvenir. The next day, Dominic leaves the hotel to head to the airport. At the security check, he tries to act naturally, hoping the wrapped object will be seen as just a memento. He passes through security without any problems and waits for his flight, feeling both excitement and a bit of anxiety about bringing the mysterious object to England. After returning to England, Dominic is eager to learn what this mysterious object is. The next morning, he decides to visit one of London's famous antique shops. He believes the owner, known as one of the best antique dealers in the city, can help solve the mystery. As he enters the antique shop, the atmosphere immediately captivates him. Dusty shelves, old books, and antique items in every corner offer a journey into the depths of history. Dominic shows the object to the shop owner and asks for information about it. The antique dealer examines the object carefully. He studies the symbols and details for a long time, then turns to Dominic and begins to speak. "It's hard to say exactly what this is," says the dealer. But I can tell you that this object is at least 1,200 years old, and I see some ancient Roman symbols on it. It appears to be a very valuable and rare piece. Dominic is both surprised and excited by what he hears. However, the antique dealer cannot provide more information. "I can't help you further," he says with a regretful expression. "But I can recommend someone. There's a Jewish antique dealer named Ariel. He's an expert in ancient artifacts, especially those from the Roman period. I believe he can uncover the mystery of this object." After getting Ariel's name and address, Dominic leaves the shop. The thought that the object could be this old and valuable excites him even more. Hoping that Ariel can help solve the mystery, he decides to visit his shop the next day. As the veil of mystery around the object slowly lifts, Dominic's adventure deepens further. The next day, Dominic decides to visit Ariel's shop, tucked away in one of London's backstreets. The shop's exterior, weathered by time, has an old sign that's barely readable. Dominic pushes open the creaky wooden door and ducks through the narrow entrance. As he steps inside, he is met with an atmosphere steeped in history, with dim lighting and dusty shelves all around. The heavy scent of old paper and wood in the air feels like a breath from centuries past. "Is anyone here?" he calls out, his voice echoing in the room. Moments later, a slightly portly, middle-aged man emerges from the back. Ariel, with his graying hair and beard stubble, adjusts his glasses and looks at Dominic with a warm and inquisitive expression. His worn vest and shirt suggest a man who bears the marks of time. With intelligent eyes behind his glasses, he greets Dominic. "Hello, how can I help you?" he asks kindly. Dominic hands Ariel the box. "I want to show you something," he says, his voice trembling with excitement. Ariel, upon looking inside the box, sits down at his desk in astonishment and begins to carefully examine the object. Despite being covered in dust and dirt, the intricate details and ancient aura of the object immediately catch his attention. Dominic moves closer to Ariel's desk. "Do you know what this is?" he asks, his voice filled with curiosity and concern. Ariel adjusts his glasses again and takes a closer look at the object. "This is a musical instrument," he says, running his finger over the surface. "But it's hard to tell from which time period. I need to clean and examine it." His words somewhat ease Dominic's uncertainty, but also stoke his hunger for more information. Dominic, looking hopeful, says, "I would really appreciate it if you could do that," his eyes fixed on Ariel's face. Ariel begins to clean the object carefully and starts asking Dominic questions. "You don't seem to be from around here. Where are you from?" he asks, his tone calm and friendly. Dominic smiles and relaxes a bit as he shares his past. "My father came here from Italy for work. We stayed here ever since. I expanded my father's business," he says. Ariel nods and continues. "I see. What is your name?" "My name is Dominic." Ariel smiles knowingly and, looking over his glasses, says, "Dominic, do you know the meaning of your name?" His voice is low and deep, as if sharing a secret. Dominic, smiling slightly, responds, "Yes, it means belonging to God." Ariel takes a deep breath. "It's a beautiful name, an old name," he says, his eyes still on the object. During the cleaning process, a strange dialogue ensues between them. Ariel, focusing on the intricate details of the object, remarks, "This object is indeed very old and valuable, but I need to do more research. The symbols and writings on it suggest how special it is." As Ariel meticulously cleans the antique instrument, he whispers, "This is at least 1,500 years old," concentrating on the details. "It's a miracle it's remained intact," he adds, focusing the magnifying glass on the fine craftsmanship. "I see demonic figures. The creators certainly weren't Christians. They didn't believe in God." He continues with a slight shiver in his voice. The structure of the instrument, blending aesthetic elegance with a dark past, reveals its mysterious and enigmatic nature through the carvings and symbols on its surface. Without lifting his eyes from the instrument, Ariel asks, "Where did you say you found it?" in a tone of slight curiosity. Dominic, taken aback for a moment, replies, "I didn't say." As the silence from Ariel continues, Dominic feels compelled to explain. "We found it in my grandfather's old house in Italy, in the attic. Who knows how long it's been there," he says. Ariel, as if sensing a lie, smiles slightly without lifting his head from the instrument. Finally, he finishes the repairs and carefully hands the instrument back to Dominic. When Dominic asks how it is played, Ariel points to a spot on the instrument. "I think you blow here." Dominic, examining the instrument closely and about to bring it to his lips, is suddenly halted by Ariel's familiar expression. "Wait!" he exclaims. Ariel quickly goes inside and returns with an old book, flipping through the pages excitedly until he stops at one. The same instrument is depicted in the book's pages. Ariel leans in and reads aloud, "Demon." Dominic, leaning closer to hears Ariel whisper, "Demon." Ariel suddenly shouts, "Demon," and says, "Take that instrument and leave immediately," pushing Dominic towards the door. Confused, Dominic says, "At least let me pay you," his voice filled with surprise. But Ariel throws him out. As Dominic leaves, still baffled, Ariel calls after him. "That instrument is too dangerous to be inherited, belonging to God." Dominic leaves Ariel's shop and heads home. The mysterious musical instrument he holds lingers in his mind. At first, he avoids touching the instrument, but a deep desire inside him constantly urges him to play it. The mystical and dark past of the instrument only heightens Dominic's curiosity. One day, he organizes a movie night with his friends. The table is laden with food, snacks, and plenty of drinks. As the night progresses, the conversation becomes more animated with the influence of alcohol. Laughter and jokes fill the room, and time flies by. The energetic atmosphere in the room boosts everyone's spirits. One of his friends notices a box in the corner of the room and curiously gets up to take it. He opens the box, takes out the musical instrument, and asks in surprise, "Wow, man, what is this?" Everyone begins to examine the instrument with curious eyes. As Dominic explains how he found it and what he experienced, everyone's attention is on him. One friend asks, "Dude, have you really never played it?" Dominic chuckles slightly and says, "That Jewish man really scared me." His friends laugh and mockingly say, "Do you really believe in those stories? What century are we in?" They all tease Dominic, insisting they don't believe in such things. "Okay, let's give it a try then. Simon, you're the musician, you go first," says one of them. Simon takes the instrument and blows into it. The room falls silent, and everyone looks at each other with great anticipation. They hear the faint rustle of the wind through the window and then burst into laughter. Simon says, "It's not that special," and hands the instrument to David. David says, "Let me try it," and takes the instrument to blow into it. Each person takes a turn trying the instrument. As they each blow into it, the room fills with laughter and mocking comments. Finally, it's Dominic's turn. He doesn't want to blow into it, but his friends insist. "Nothing happened to us, nothing will happen to you either. Come on, give it a try," they say. Dominic says, "All right then," and takes a deep breath, blowing into the instrument. Everyone applauds and says, "See, nothing happened." However, a deep sense of unease settles within Dominic. 2 days later, Simon has a big concert. The group of friends excitedly prepares for this important event and goes to the show together. The concert hall is filled with people gathered to watch Simon's talent. The stage lights come on, and Simon takes his place in the center of the stage. He successfully plays the first 2 pieces, and the crowd cheers enthusiastically. Next up is the most important piece of the night. Simon takes a deep breath, picks up his instrument, and begins his performance. As the piece progresses, the rhythm and melody of the music captivate the audience. However, when the piece reaches its climax, something unexpected happens. Blood starts to flow from Simon's eyes. At first, no one understands what's happening, but then Simon drops to his knees and begins to vomit blood. As the crowd watches in shock, Simon collapses and starts convulsing violently. Dominic shouts, "Ambulance! Call an ambulance!" his voice trembling with panic. Someone in the crowd yells, "I'm a doctor," and rushes to Simon's side. However, Simon is still convulsing uncontrollably, and the doctor can't do anything. The doctor tries to calm Simon, but despite all efforts, Simon remains motionless on the ground. Dominic watches in horror, trying to grasp the reality of what is happening. His eyes are locked on Simon's lifeless body, frozen amidst the murmur of the crowd. As the crowd gathers around Simon, trying to understand what is happening, sirens can be heard approaching. The lights of the ambulance cut through the dark night and enter the hall. Paramedics quickly climb onto the stage and start attending to Simon. However, it is too late. The paramedics confirm that Simon is dead. Dominic can't hold back his tears and, with trembling hands, pulls his phone out of his pocket. The burden of having to call Simon's family weighs heavily on his shoulders. His friends, also in shock and sorrow, embrace each other for comfort. 2 days later, they arrange Simon's funeral. In a gloomy atmosphere that looks like it's about to rain, the gathered crowd watches Simon's farewell to eternity. As they lower him into the ground, Simon's family can't hold back their tears. His mother and father find strength by embracing each other, while his friends and loved ones share the same grief. After the funeral, the crowd slowly begins to disperse. While Dominic is still standing by the grave, he feels someone touch his arm. "Hello? Do you recognize me?" asks the doctor gently. Dominic slowly shakes his head. "No, I don't," he says. "I was the doctor at the concert." The doctor continues. "I tried to help Simon." "Oh, yes, doctor. I remember now," Dominic says, a sorrowful expression appearing on his face. "You also did Simon's autopsy, didn't you? I actually wanted to talk to you." The doctor nods seriously. "Yes, that's correct. There's no doubt Simon died from internal bleeding, but we couldn't determine what caused the bleeding. Did anything unusual happen to Simon recently that we might not know about?" Dominic pauses for a moment, his eyes drifting off. "No, not that I know of," he says finally. "We were together 2 days before the concert, and he was fine. However, he suddenly remembers the whistle they played and feels uneasy. A sense of unrest rises within him, but he tries to suppress the thought immediately. It couldn't have been because of that, he thinks to himself. Everyone played it, and nothing happened to them. The doctor notices the expression on Dominic's face and looks at him carefully. "Are you sure?" he asks, his voice tinged with curiosity and suspicion. "Maybe you remember something." Dominic takes a deep breath and looks the doctor in the eyes. "No, I don't remember anything," he says. The doctor, unsatisfied, says, "All right then, see you," and walks away. As Dominic says goodbye to the doctor, the growing unease and curiosity within him intensify. Dominic tries to cope with Simon's death. During the 2 days following the funeral, he attempts to focus on his work, but his thoughts constantly drift back to Simon and his unexpected death. The next day at work, he is startled by the sharp ringing of his phone. When he answers, the voice on the other end informs him that David has died. His heart tightens, and his throat constricts. "How did it happen?" Dominic asks, his voice trembling. At that moment, the mysterious musical instrument comes to mind. First Simon, now David, both had played that instrument. Could it be one by one? He thinks, the fear within him growing. Dominic rushes home in a panic. Once inside, he quickly finds a box and lights a fire in it. He throws the mysterious instrument into the flames. The box catches fire and blazes up, the flames rising as Dominic's eyes glisten with worry. When the fire dies down, he stirs the ashes with a stick and, shockingly, finds the instrument intact, untouched by the flames. When he picks it up, he feels a deep chill and shivers. He immediately drops it and grabs a rock, starting to smash it. With each blow, he feels increasingly desperate because the instrument remains undamaged. Dominic stops with the stone in his hand, squatting in the middle of the room, unsure of what to do. His mind is confused, his heart racing, as he begins to contemplate what to do under the dark shadow of helplessness and fear. A heavy silence hangs in the room. His mind overflows with various scenarios. Is this cursed? He wonders. He has no idea of the instrument's origin or how to neutralize it. He tries to search his memories and knowledge for a solution. Maybe going back to Ariel could be a solution? Dominic takes a deep breath and stands up. He paces slowly around the room, his hands trembling, his eyes fixed on the instrument. "I have to stop this," he mutters to himself, but he has no idea how to do it. Perhaps he needs more information to solve this mystery. When Dominic hurriedly arrived at Ariel's shop, Ariel quickly shut the door upon seeing him. Dominic pounded on the door, shouting, "Ariel! Ariel, you have to help me." His voice trembled with desperation. Ariel responded from behind the door, "Go away! I told you never to come here again." Dominic leaned against the door, pleading, "I can't leave. You have to help me. If you don't help, I'll die." At these words, Ariel opened the door and looked at Dominic angrily. "Did you use it?" he asked, his eyes a mixture of fear and anger. Dominic, desperate, said, "Yes, not just me. My friends played it too," his voice weak and hopeless. "Help me." Ariel took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and shook his head. "No one can help you," he said in a cold voice. Dominic remembered the book. "The book, that book. Maybe it says what I need to do," he said, his voice trembling with hope. Ariel's expression changed, and he paused for a moment. "There's nothing written in that book," he said. "No, there is. You read it, what did it say?" Dominic insisted. Ariel sighed deeply. "It takes what is offered to it," he said. "Nothing else was written." Dominic, his eyes filled with tears, asked, "What should I do?" Ariel shook his head hopelessly. "Take it back to where you found it. Maybe you can find a solution there," he said, and quickly closed the door. As Dominic stood helplessly in front of the door, he thought about Ariel's words. "It takes what is offered to it." Trying to decipher the meaning of these words, he had only one thought in his mind. "I have to take this cursed instrument back to where I found it." Determined, Dominic quickened his steps and set off. He immediately made his way back to the courtyard of Hagia Sophia. Along the way, his mind was occupied with Ariel's words and the mysterious sentence from the book. "It takes what is offered to it." Was this the key to the terrible power of the instrument? And if so, could there be a way to stop it? When he arrived at Hagia Sophia, he found himself again among the historic structures and stones. The sky had darkened, and the clouds covered the sky. He started to search the garden for the place where he had lifted the stone. Fear and curiosity pierced through him. He crouched down and lifted the stone. With trembling hands, Dominic placed the instrument inside. His eyes filled with tears, and he silently prayed. "Please end this curse," he whispered. Dominic realized that the curse had not ended, and facing this truth drove him into deep despair. While waiting in a hotel room, he writhed in helplessness and anxiety. If the curse had truly ended, his friend Nathan, who had played the instrument last, shouldn't have died. He had returned the instrument, but it hadn't been enough. He immediately grabbed his phone and called his friend. The phone rang, but no one answered. He called again and again, but each time the result was the same. Finally, on his last call, someone answered. A sorrowful voice said, "Hello, this is Dominic," he said hurriedly, his heart racing. "How is Nathan?" Dominic sensed the sadness in the person's voice. "Dominic, is that you? They took Nathan to the hospital. His condition is very bad." A chill ran through Dominic. What happened? When did this happen? Half an hour ago. He started bleeding from his mouth, so we rushed him to the hospital. Dominic's mind worked quickly. This had happened after he returned the instrument. The curse was still active. Putting it back in its place hadn't been enough. With his head spinning, not knowing what to do, he looked out of the hotel window. The city's lights and bustle felt alien to him. There had to be a way to stop the curse. But what? Ariel's words echoed in his ears. It takes what is offered to it. He had to decipher the meaning of these words. Suddenly, it occurred to him that the box he found beneath Hagia Sophia might only be the beginning. Perhaps there were more clues at the site where he found the box. Maybe there was a ritual or ancient inscription that could end this curse. Quickly deciding, Dominic left the hotel and headed straight for Hagia Sophia. His heart was filled with fear and hope. He had to find the source of the curse and end it. Reaching Hagia Sophia in the dark of night, he began to wander again among the garden stones and old structures. This time, he searched more carefully and consciously. The mysterious atmosphere of Hagia Sophia increased the pressure on him even more. In the dark, he felt around the stones and soil. Finally, he reached the spot where he had found the box before. He crouched down and, taking a deep breath, began digging further beneath the stone. He hoped to find something, a clue, a sign. As he dug into the soil, he moved with the hope of finding an inscription or symbol he hadn't seen before. He continued digging without noticing his hands getting covered in soil. Deep down, under the stone, he found another box. This box was larger and heavier than the previous one. With trembling hands, he opened the box and saw ancient parchments and symbols inside. The parchments might describe an ancient ritual or a way to end the curse. Dominic carefully examined the parchments and began to realize something. The meaning of the phrase, "it takes what is offered to it," was slowly becoming clear. Perhaps, to end the curse, the instrument had to be offered with a sacrifice. This thought horrified him, but there seemed to be no other way. In the silence of the sacred place, he continued reading the parchments, hoping to find the correct ritual to end the curse. As his eyes followed the ancient writings in the dark, he placed all his hope in these old documents and symbols to find a solution. Dominic tried to read the parchments, but he couldn't understand what was written. The next day, he decided to seek a solution at Istanbul's ancient landmark, the Grand Bazaar. Perhaps the antique dealers there could help him. When he arrived at the Grand Bazaar, he navigated through its narrow and winding streets. Amid colorful fabrics, spices, and antiques, his eyes searched for an antique shop. Eventually, he found a small antique shop tucked in a corner and entered. The owner, an elderly and wise-looking man named Hassan, greeted Dominic attentively. "Welcome. How can I assist you?" Hassan asked, glancing at the parchments Dominic held. Taking a deep breath, Dominic handed the parchments to Hassan. "I found these beneath Hagia Sophia. I don't understand what they say. Can you help me?" Hassan carefully examined the parchments and put on his glasses to read the inscriptions. After a few moments of silent reading, he looked up at Dominic. "These describe a very ancient and powerful ritual. Could you tell me exactly where you found them?" Dominic honestly recounted everything to Hassan, about the musical instrument, what happened to his friends, and his experience in Ariel's shop. As Hassan listened, he appeared lost in deep thought. "Dominic, what you've tangled with is very powerful. Getting rid of it will be truly challenging. However, there is a way," Hassan said, looking at Dominic intently. "To break free from this curse, you must offer it a sacrifice. Life for life. If you can find a sheep or a goat, sacrifice it at the Daikalitas at midnight. If you're fortunate, it may spare you." Dominic's heart raced. Hassan then pulled out an old and ornate dagger from a drawer. "This dagger is quite special," he said. "After you sacrifice the animal, if nothing happens to you, use this dagger to strike the musical instrument. Its symbols resemble those on the instrument. Perhaps this is the key to breaking the curse." Examining the dagger carefully, Dominic gathered his courage. "I must do this," he said determinedly. "I must end this curse." Hassan promised to assist Dominic and gave him instructions to prepare for the ritual to be conducted near the Daikalitas that evening. After completing his preparations, Dominic thanked Hassan and left the shop. Around midnight, Dominic arrived at the Daikalitas with the dagger in hand and a goat he had found. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the stones, making the atmosphere even more unsettling. Dominic took a deep breath, brought the goat to the front of the stone, and began the ritual following Hassan's instructions. His heart filled with fear and hope. After sacrificing the goat, Dominic picked up the dagger and approached the musical instrument. His eyes fixated on the symbols on the dagger's blade. If this ritual didn't work, he could face the same fate as his friends. Raising the dagger, he struck the musical instrument with all his strength. For a moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. Then, a powerful light and wave of energy emanated from the instrument, pushing Dominic back. His eyes burned, yet he felt that something had changed. Dominic, when he looked back at the musical instrument, couldn't believe his eyes. Seeing it split into two filled him with immense joy. Finally, he had broken the curse. Quickly gathering the pieces from the ground, he wrapped them in a cloth and buried them under a nearby stone. When he returned to where the sacrificed animal lay, he noticed police officers gathering around. His hands stained with blood had caught their attention, leading to his arrest. However, Dominic felt a sense of calm within. The police hurriedly took him to the station, but Dominic's face bore a relieved expression. He had finally rid himself of this curse. As he was placed in custody, he leaned his head against the wall and took a deep breath. The peace within him subdued any fear or anxiety he had endured. That night, for the first time in a long while, he would sleep peacefully. Even the hard bed felt like luxury to him now, as the dreadful thoughts that had plagued his mind gave way to tranquility. In his dreams, Dominic saw not the curse but freedom and peace. The slight coolness in the air, the moonlight filtering through the detention cell's windows, and the soft murmurs accompanied his deep slumber. In his dream, he walked peacefully with his friends Simon and David, laughing and enjoying themselves. This peace was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. When morning came, with the sun slowly rising over Istanbul's skyline, a young police officer entered Dominic's cell to bring him breakfast. However, what he saw inside left him horrified. "Oh my God, what is this?" he exclaimed in shock. Dominic lay on the floor covered in blood. Blood flowed from his eyes and mouth. The young officer immediately called for help, but Dominic's lifeless body didn't stir. The morning that began with peace for Dominic ended tragically. The curse's power had dealt him a final blow. Yet, even in his last moments, Dominic believed he had finally escaped the curse. With a peaceful expression on his face, eyes closed, he took his final breath. Amid the bewildered gazes of the police, Dominic's story tragically came to an end.
I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.